Hello and welcome to the Autoblog podcast. I'm Greg Migliori. Joining me today is our senior editor for all things green, John Snyder.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. I'm glad to be here.
It's nearing the end of February. Hopefully we get a break of this winter weather, but we've got some cool stuff to talk about.
We sure do.
So both of us have driven the new AMG G63, the Galanda wagon with all the horsepower.
Yeah. I actually drove it last night. It was pretty cool. So after work, I go and meet my wife for some appetizers, just little Valentine's Day celebration.
Yeah, good idea.
And she doesn't. I don't tell her what I'm driving. And then we're driving home, and I catch up to her, and I pass her in this thing, and I could just feel her shaking her head as I go by, and so she's behind me as we're pulling onto our street, and I've got this horseshoe driveway.
Whoa!
And everything's all super snowy and icy, and instead of going down the driveway, I just drive across the lawn.
Oh, wow. That's quite the move there.
Yeah, and so I get out, and she says, completely unnecessary. And that basically sums up my opinion of this car. Those two words. You could tag that on the back of the car and have that be the badge. Completely unnecessary. But it's still kind of awesome.
That, I think, right there is like, we should score this car, give it a rating, our Autoblog rating. That could be the tagline right there. It's completely unnecessary, but totally awesome. And so, yeah, we'll get a little bit more into the Galanda wagon. We'll also touch briefly on our long-term Kia Stinger. We've got that in the Autoblog garage. Then later on in the show, we'll hit on John just drove the BRZ and the WRX on some snow and ice, which sounded awesome.
It was amazing. It was.
Pretty wild. And then we'll hit on some of the news. GM, Amazon, Rivian. There's some stuff going on there. It happened this week.
Yeah, it's intriguing.
I think it's super intriguing. We'll break that down. And then Maserati is sort of retrenching for the future. One of its old standbys is going to be on the way out at the Modena plant. And we're hearing that's where the Alfieri is going to be made, which we think now may be a green car. So
yeah.
Pretty cool stuff. Lastly, we will spend your money. It's also a green theme, but lots of good stuff in this show. So I guess we'll start off with the opposite of the green theme, which is to go back to the G63. So let me get this straight. You go for appetizers. You drove across your lawn. Awesome. How was the 4-wheel drive? Is super capable.
Yeah, it was perfectly good. Our roads were cold, not super wet or icy. There was a little bit of ice left over. But, I gunned it on parts of the road, and it always felt like it was just about to lose grip or complete control. But it held on. It's definitely a lot more drivable than the last generation, which I hated driving the last one. But then we had the G550 in recently, and that was promising. And then this, I was actually surprised with how much I actually enjoyed driving it. So, yeah, it sucked a little bit of my soul, especially when I went to go to the pump to put some more gas in it this morning. But at least I enjoyed it while I had it.
Well, it gets 12 city and 15 highway, and it puts out, this is the 4-liter bi-turbo V8. We're talking 577 ponies and a seat-pulling 627 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the AMG engine right there. That really... It takes a lot of gas.
And you really hear it. It's got those side pipes sticking out under the running
boards. You almost got
boards.
to watch, when you're getting stuff out of the back seat.
Right. But you hear it a lot better, which is, it sounds really great. You get this sort of like vibrato of the exhaust on either side of you, and it sounds really breathy. It's really cool. I like that about it.
Sounded great. I agree with you. The new G-Class is a little bit of a different animal than it was before. It was, it'd probably been a year since we had like the old one in the fleet, and that was a challenge to handle. It was rough. The chassis was rough. Steering was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was tough to maintain that thing. I never thought it was as bad as some people would say, simply because when I drove that thing, I was on a mission. I was driving a G-Class. That's what I was doing. I didn't look at it as anything else but what it was. But now I think this makes the Galanda wagon a little more I wouldn't say accessible or attainable, because that's not the right word for this car at all, but it makes it more reasonable to drive
Yeah.
for, I would say, like a rich enthusiast who just wants this status symbol, but, you know, maybe doesn't want to work that hard to drive their status symbol, if you will.
Right. I mean, it was originally, you know, this amazing off-road vehicle. Nobody drove it that way. I mean, at least here. I mean, I see them all over near our offices, people driving them. Yeah, it's a status symbol, a very hard to drive status symbol. But now this one, it's, you know, for the people who are actually buying it and driving it, it's a lot more drivable. Still pretty capable. It's got, you know, the diff lock buttons that people probably not use very often, but they're there. But yeah, it's just way easier to steer. The suspension's a lot more forgiving. You don't feel like you're going to tip over. It's just all around more comfortable. The seating position's better, and there's more room, but it still looks classic.
Totally. I think they actually improved the design. Because basically they didn't change much of it.
Yeah.
But you know, having the new, like the way those headlights just like pop, I think that looks great. I mean, the stuff they changed was very subtle.
Right.
So
at least on the outside, for
on
sure.
the outside, yeah. The inside just looks like a Mercedes-AMG,
Yeah.
like a truck, you know, style layout.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to be clear though, I wouldn't say like people say, "Oh, did this go soft?" No, it didn't. It's still the G-Wagon. It still drives like how you would expect. But some of the stuff that's like was a little bit much is probably gone, and now it's just like, you know, a better execution of what it is for most of its buyers.
The ruggedness that it carried before was not a feature; it was almost a flaw of aging technology, and so now it's brought up to speed, and it's still, you know, rugged. It can do all the rugged things, but it's just more livable.
I would compare it to shaving with like an old school safety razor.
Yeah.
Like you use one of those and you can get a really good close shave. But if you use like a really old one that's got maybe a blade that was, you know, a really old blade or something, that's pretty rough. If you use a modern safety razor, you know, with a nice handle, it's lighter. Yeah, you know, you get the
steel's improved,
the same kind of shave, but you don't rip your face up.
Right.
So these are all good things. So yeah, you know, it sounds good. It's fun to drive. It's just, it really is. I think if, you know, I were looking for some sort of status symbol, like say I was a professional athlete or something, this is something I would want to put in my garage simply because, you know, yeah, obviously the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis are on like the short list of things you want, but there's something about rolling around in this that I would just love.
Well, yeah.
And it's so much fun.
I mean, you're higher up than everybody too. Like you can see around everything. You don't have to worry about snow or ice or even, you know, curbs or anything. You can just roll right over anything.
Your lawn.
Yeah. Nothing's going to get in its way. And yeah, it looks good. It still looks the part. And I think the creature comforts on the interior really help too. Like the modern, you know, it's similar to the other Mercedes interiors we've seen with the double digital screen and the ambient lighting and stuff, which is unnecessary. But this entire car unnecessary, but better now.
How about the doors though? Love the doors. Push button door handles, the thwack they make when you close them.
Yeah, that is when you approach like 20 miles an hour and it automatically locks and you're not expecting it. It is loud. It's whack. And it's just a cool sound. It's super satisfying to lock and unlock and to open and close the doors. You have to really slam those doors too.
I love that. That's great. It's the only tricky thing is it's very, like, the weather right now is not great. We're in this weird area where like it's always icy. Like if you don't shovel your sidewalk or your driveway one day, it's like center ice at, you know, Little Caesars Arena here in Detroit. It's really annoying at this point because it's February and nobody even wants to shovel snow anymore. But it's a great way to almost go totally off balance. You slam the door and then like almost do a pirouette you know, in your driveway. But yeah, but that's the G-Wagon. I had so much fun with this thing. Let's shift gears.
Sounds good.
To our long-term Kia Stinger. We've had this since July. We both put had some seat time in this thing recently. Both airport duty, which for me is a little bit farther than you, but It kind of stayed with me a little bit just because I live a good distance north of the airport, northeast. And so it's good highway time.
Yeah.
And it really made me think. I noticed a lot of the things that some of you guys have been noting because it had actually been a while since I drove the Stinger. But a couple things really stood out. One is that twin turbo V6, ours is so it's 365 horsepower, 376 pound-feet of torque, in case you're wondering. Ours had all-wheel drive. It feels like a little bit of not a little bit, it feels like a hot rod in some ways. It sounds good. It's strong. It's potent, like you said. But this is a legit sports sedan. The more I drive it, the more I really am feeling about this car.
Yeah, it's faster than it looks, and it looks fast. I get comments from people passing by all the time how they love it. Ours is red too, so
yeah. It really looks the part too, with those wheels and
it does. But man, yeah, this thing is fast. You step on it and it springs to life and it just roars. It's fun.
4.7 seconds to 60, top speed of 167 miles an hour.
I haven't hit that yet, but
you're not trying then, I guess. It's a fun car and it sounds good too.
It is.
When you put it in sport mode and play with the paddles, you really can tune that thing up.
Yeah. I have a lot of fun driving it. Not just because it's fast. I feel like it does some other things well too. My favorite thing to do in this car is to brake and turn. You know, just that slowing down for turn in and then actually turning in. Ours is the all-wheel drive version. It just feels really good, really satisfying. It's a little more wallowy, you know, than say like the Genesis G70, which is a little more nailed down. It's a little softer in the suspension, but I don't know. There's something about just like stopping and turning with gusto that this car just does really well. It's really rewarding, and I like to do it over and over and over.
It's really been, I would say, a surprisingly enjoyable long-termer. Like we knew we were getting this really important car for Kia that that they were trying to get into this segment and be competitive. And I mean, obviously, as enthusiasts, we're like, yeah, we'll take this high horsepower, sporty looking thing. But we also were kind of like, well, we've got the Pacifica minivan. That's going to be like our long trip car. We had the pickup, the Ridgeline, that we certainly used for almost everything else. I wasn't quite sure how much use this might get, to be candid at first, especially with the roads getting so bad around here.
Yeah.
It's on winter tires. We're getting regular use out of it. It's been a lot of fun. Now, some of the downsides, though. The right passenger door is making a weird noise.
Yeah.
We're not sure what's going on there.
It's creaking really hard, and it's, and that's not the only, like, there's, I've noticed some rattles, something coming from the rear, like the rear window maybe, just driving around over bumps and stuff. So it might just be, it's hard to gauge until you sample a wide selection of the same unit. But our car has a few creaks and rattles and stuff. But until it could be a fluke, it could just be ours. But
yeah, and I think that's an area they're going to want to be very aware of, because if you're going to have conquest buyers, you're going to need to have a car that's really buttoned up, because there's no way somebody's going to say, ooh, this is 5 Series performance at a lower price, but I give up my sort of Bimmer, cachet for it. You need to have something that is totally buttoned down and does serve as that value proposition. Right. Otherwise, buyers are going to be like, cool engine, but the quality's not there.
And I still come across people, all the time who are just like, Kia? Oh, it's a garbage brand. They're still trying to overcome this image that is super outdated, but it still exists out in the public. So yeah, you got to get it right if you want to clear that hurdle. But I think this car is the car that can help them do that, just because it's super sporty. It's unlike any other Kia, and I would totally own it. I would own one if I wasn't worried about fuel economy.
Fuel economy is not quite the strength here. 19 city, 25 highway. but it's a good value here. I mean, the base turbo, the 2.0 liter, is almost $33,000. The one we have is coming in at north of 46.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money. But to your point, this car is designed by the people who did some of the best Audis and BMWs of the last decade or so. We've got, let's see, Albert Biermann, who is former BMW M Vice President of Engineering. I interviewed this guy. He knows his stuff. He's like the guy who made those M cars the last 5-10 years great, if you think they're great. But he was the man behind them. We got Peter Schreier, designed it, the longtime VP of design at Audi. I mean, it's got all the ingredients for, the right recipe here of something that's really special. Now, I think it's getting there. I'm not sure I would own one. I think for 46 grand, I would look other places to spend my money, but I've enjoyed driving it a lot. And I would give this, it's probably where I thought it would be. You get a car like this, you're a little skeptical, then it wins you over, then you see some of the flaws, and then you kind of settle somewhere in the middle. I think this is a very solid execution for Hyundai, for Kia, excuse me. But I think they do need to button up a few things.
Yeah, and they need to follow up on it too. They have an opportunity to do cool things in the future. But yeah, they need to button this down a little bit and move forward with that in mind.
Cool. So speaking of moving forward, let's move on to our next segment. You just got back from some snow and ice driving in some Subarus.
Yes.
Sounded awesome.
It was. Subaru offers this program called the Subaru Winter Experience. It's ice driving out on a frozen lake in northern Wisconsin, Eagle River, Wisconsin. So we had to fly into this little town called Rhinelander and take a shuttle, 45 minutes or so. And we were in this quaint little town that is like the snowmobile capital of the world. And
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it actually was. And we go out on this lake that's privately owned, and Subaru and their partners rent it and have this ice driving course. And they have the WRX, the STI, and the BRZ. And they plow courses out on the ice, and they have a pro rally driver, Subaru Motorsports Rallycross driver Patrick Sandell from Sweden, who's one of the instructors. And it's amazing. So you're in this. I started out in the BRZ on this slalom course. These cars are fitted with studded tires. They've got these giant studs, 400 studs on each tire.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we started out on this slalom course just to get a feel for the car and how it handles, this rear wheel drive car handles on ice. And then we move on to the all wheel drive sedans, and then they plowed out a course for the BRZs on the lake and a separate course for the WRX and STI. You just go out there and spend as much time sideways as possible. It's really fun. And then later in the day, there's a larger course that's sort of a replica of a rally stage almost, and they give you pace notes and
that sounds so cool.
Yeah, you get to drive that, and throughout the day you're getting instruction from these professionals, and later on in the day you get to ride along with them too and see how these cars can really perform. But yeah, it's so much fun. It was such a novel thing to drive the BRZ on ice. It's just so tail happy, as you would expect. You turn off the traction control, and you point the nose in. You get the front tires to bite a little bit, and then the rear end slides out. And then you're basically steering yourself around with the accelerator, and it's just the most heroic feeling in the world when you feel that tug. You're going sideways, and then the lateral G's switch from your side, and then you get pressed in on the small of your back from the seat as you exit the corner. It's amazing. It's so good,
so great.
Yeah, and while the BRZ is happy to slide back and forth, The WRX and STI, you have to work a little harder to get them sideways and to get them stable, to get it to shift weight. It wants to go straight. The angular momentum's there, so you're sort of working a little hard to get it to shift from side to side. But when you do, you're going really fast, and it's super satisfying. And we were just out there doing laps all day. It was snowing a ton, but they kept plowing it down, and so we'd have bare ice for the studs to grip into. People are getting stuck in the snowbanks over and over and over and over. I didn't, thankfully, but at one point we had to go out. There was a car that was like high-sided on a snowbank, just stuffed in the snow, and they were pulling it out with like an Ascent or something, but it wasn't coming out, and they were digging. And so Sandel, the rally driver, is on the. I hear him over the radio. He's like, "We're gonna need more people out here to lift this thing. Otherwise, it's gonna have to stay here till spring." And so we all hop in cars and go out there, and then there's like 8 or 10 of us shoving this car back onto the course as the other vehicles towing it out by the tow loop. And it was it was an adventure, man. It was fun. It was 16 degrees out there. We weren't sure if our flight would come in the morning to take us home. I wouldn't have mind being stuck out there. That was some of the most fun driving you can do is just ice driving, just sliding around at fast speeds. There's nothing to hit except snow.
It's definitely a part of this job that definitely borders on like the fantasy side of
really
things. You know, it's it's a great experience. Any winter driving that I've done in like, you know, a controlled state, like through, you know, automotive journalism has just been so much fun. You really just can cut loose. You can really enjoy the car, enjoy your surroundings. You don't have any fear because like you said, you're just in the middle of this lake, you know, there's plenty of room. If you spin out, like the worst that can happen is you stuff it into a snowbank and then 10 of your colleagues come pull you out.
Yeah.
So that's pretty great.
It really lets you sort of learn the actual limits of the car in those conditions without having to worry about repercussions. It's very forgiving. So I learned a lot just through experience, just through driving. I learned a lot about those cars more quickly than I would have, you know, if there was a wall next to me.
So which was your favorite? You drove 3 pretty awesome cars.
Oh, God. I was asked that at the event, and I think just for the novelty of it, perhaps the BRZ, just being able to fling it around. Yeah, that was pretty special.
I would, if I was there, I probably would have come down on that as well.
That was what I was most excited to do. But it really made me regret selling my WRX too. This is my first winter without it, and now I'm like trying to find people with lakefront access, and you know.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
Cool. Well, that was quite the adventure. Yeah, I'm glad you got to experience. I wish I had been there. That sounds like so much fun.
It was cool.
Yeah, let's move on to some news then. So, crazy big news out of the mobility front here. General Motors and Amazon, of all people, are reportedly interested in investing in Rivian.
Mm-hmm.
They're the electric truck and SUV maker that made a big splash at the Los Angeles Auto Show. Amazon has just today, it's Friday, confirmed that it will spend $700 million, to invest in Rivian. So this is huge news. General Motors, it sounds like that's still more of a reportedly. By the time you listen to this, I wouldn't be surprised if something is confirmed.
Right.
Either way, a lot of money going into a really intriguing company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they've already had some backing already, but I think having a name like Amazon really puts them on the radar. And we were talking about this. It's interesting. What sets Rivian apart from some of these other startups, electric vehicle startups that are out there? I guess maybe the fact that a lot of those other startups have Chinese backing, which we tend to not take super seriously, especially after the whole Faraday Future debacle. Amazon, for us, it's a tangible. We know Amazon's power, and so it seems pretty serious when they're investing in this company.
I think it is interesting that like Rivian appears to be the place that two huge players are placing their bets.
Right.
Like you were saying, we were saying off microphone, like what makes them special? I mean, what they did in LA was special.
Yeah.
But we've seen a lot of really cool reveals of electric vehicles that ended up being vaporware. Yeah, they're testing this tech on like F-150 chassis. We've seen some spy shots. We've seen that. I'm pretty bullish on these guys actually. Their CEO, RJ Scaringe, he's definitely a visionary. He has an idea of what he wants to do. I hope they make it because honestly, I right now am really loving this total like reset of electric vehicle makers. It's almost like the dawn of the 20th century where all these like different companies were jumping in and trying to see if they can make it.
Yeah.
And some did, some didn't. Then there was this shakeout and we had like basically 3 American and then 3 or 4 Japanese and German companies for the next 70 years. So I could see something like that happening in this space. But, we'll see. Again, I'm a little surprised, impressed, but also surprised that Rivian is the one that is sort of like at this point separating itself from the herd.
Yeah, and $700 million. That's a sizable chunk of money. Granted, Amazon has tons of cash.
Yeah, that's how much you'll make on toilet paper in the next hour.
Right, but seriously, that's a big vote of confidence in this company, and yeah, it should be good for here. They're just down the road in Plymouth. That's where their headquarters is, and they've got a factory in Illinois, I believe.
It's the former Mitsubishi factory,
and they're hiring former Mitsubishi workers and stuff. So it's good. It'll be good for those areas too. So I'm happy. I'm happy that they're getting taken seriously and that they're getting some traction. And I just can't wait to drive these vehicles because they sound awesome.
The question I have is, so a couple questions I have about how this could play out. One is so Amazon is generally more looking at like robot delivery vehicles, things like that. It's interesting that they're looking at an electric truck and SUV maker.
Yeah.
Obviously, these could be used as delivery vehicles. That's sort of the obvious play. But is this also perhaps a strategy move for Amazon to try to get into the automaking world? To me, there's a couple things that could be going on here. And then perhaps somehow you layer autonomous tech either onto Rivian or maybe that's another thing. We've heard different rumblings about Amazon and trying to get into the car space. Still a stunning development. And then you take a step back and you say, well, what's GM's play here? They haven't actually confirmed yet how much they're going to invest in Rivian, but they already make a Silverado that we are very familiar with and a Sierra. And it's like, I would have thought the play would have been to more electrify them versus try to sort of use like Rivian. Are they is ultimately, what's the end play here, I guess, as I'm really thinking out loud about this? Is it to like sell a Rivian truck in a GM dealership? Is it to take Rivian's learnings and tech and put them in GM vehicles? Is it to make Rivian a GM brand? Like there's just so many different ways this could play out.
Right.
And again, however much money they end up investing, GM has a lot of money too. They could 700 million, even $1 billion. It's not quite a rounding error, but they got the money. They could do it. So I do wonder what GM's play is here. I think it's a good move for them. I think, whatever the next investment figure is, I think it's going to be money well spent because they're taking a risk and they're going after an emerging player. The other side of this though, and this kind of dovetails with what we were saying earlier, is what is Rivian's special sauce? Like what is their tech that like GM feels that they need to be a part of? Because this is the company that has the Volt and the Bolt. Like is what Rivian is doing that much more advanced? Candidly, I don't think so. So I wonder exactly what this gets for GM other than it seems like a very smart strategic play.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mystery. I know, like, yeah, Rivian, they're promising huge range in their vehicles, like 400 miles, tons of power, but that's not something that is exclusive to them. I don't think that's out of GM's reach on its own. So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting times. I think we're going to see more of this. I think collaboration and consolidation is this like new industry shakes out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're seeing it between, bigger automakers, cooperating like Ford and VW, and then seeing it between larger automakers and these startups could be interesting.
It's it's like I said, it's almost like a reboot of 100 years ago. So, speaking of 100 years ago, let's talk about one of the oldest brands in the industry, Maserati. Maserati, we're getting word that they're planning a shift in production at their Modena plant, which will essentially get the Alfieri online, perhaps in the first part of 2020. It also means the end of the Gran Turismo, perhaps in as soon as 9 months. So it's a shift for Maserati. We kind of knew this is coming. A little bit of insidery news here, but I think if you're an enthusiast, like, you're pretty psyched about the Alfieri. It's a beautiful looking sports car. We were hearing it might get some electric tech baked into the powertrain.
Yeah, it could be all electric, which would be cool.
I think that's the play for them, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone else is doing, they're talking about spinning off their own. Maserati's talking about spinning off their own sort of electric brand called, I think, Maserati Blue. Introducing a new car, in the near future, that might be a good way to kick off that brand. But also, it's the Gran Turismo is ancient at this point. I see why they might sunset that.
Frankly, we've been hearing about the end of that for like 3 years.
Right, and we've been hearing about the coming of the Alfieri for longer, I feel like. So, yeah, this has been a long time coming. Not super surprising, but definitely interesting in the way they're doing it and the timing, especially if it's going to get electrified.
I think it's Maserati needs an electric Alfieri because right now they're doing some cool things. I drove the Levante Trofeo last summer out at Pebble Beach. That's a very nice vehicle. If you're, again, looking for something that's different than like an X5 or something, you want that Maserati like image. This is a cool SUV. The Ghibli is pretty solid. Their lineup is decent. I think they have that historical brand image, like I said. So I think they have like a lot of elements to be viable as like a company going forward. But I think they also need to perhaps raise their image a little bit. Yeah. Just in the collective public that, hey, they're still out there. Maserati's not a brand that went out of existence in the 50s, Right. So I think they do need like a halo car like the Alfieri to get their name back out there.
For sure. Yeah. And, with the support of Ferrari, there's an opportunity to have a halo car, a new flagship. They've gone into SUVs a bit because they've had to. Now we get to see their new sports car. Hopefully that can help, reinvigorate the brand and the interest in it from enthusiasts.
Yeah, some more to come on that. This is actually, we mentioned this because it's a good chance to talk about Maserati. The news is actually almost like a very insidery production, almost like insider neighborhood news kind of thing out of Italy, just a plant changeover. But then we could kind of extrapolate and be like, oh, this is what they're doing with their model lineup, which is cool. So more on that to come, and can't wait to drive the electric Alfieri if it becomes a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about we spend some money?
Let's do it.
Alrighty. We have keeping things green. We have, let's see, Weston is writing to us from the West Coast. He's an environmental lawyer for a Native American tribe north of Seattle, Washington. Very cool. That's where several of our editors are out there. Yep. So very cool. First year on the job, he needs a car. So what he's looking for is an EV or a plug-in, which is cool. Budget is $30 to $35K. but that's after incentives. So he's factoring all that good stuff. Could stretch to 40, but we'll see. He's driven, he currently, well, this is interesting. In the past, he had an 87, I love this phrasing, traffic cone orange Chevy Beretta GT that he ran up to 240,000 miles.
That's awesome.
Really impressive that you got 240K on a Beretta. I had a Lumina from the early 90s and ran for a while, but the windows and the doors didn't work anymore. Yeah, good times. I digress. So he's basically a commuter, needs some range to get into Seattle, which is a 90-mile one-way trip once or twice a month. He needs it to be comfortable. Yeah, he's currently in a Civic, 2009 Civic to be specific. Needs good seats and needs it to be green. Little bored with his Civic. It's a Civic hybrid to be precise. Wants a little bit more power. So here are his choices. He's tested the Chevy Bolt, the Chevy Volt, Prius plug-in, 2018 Leaf, and the Tesla Model 3. A mid-range spec Model 3, I should add. So he breaks down his choices, leading a couple different ways. But from that field, what do you think, John?
So he mentions the shoulder injury, which is the big variable here. So that's the one thing you're going to have to test out all these and make sure the seat is actually comfortable for you. The first thing that jumped out at me was the 2018 Leaf, because I really like that car. But it seems like Weston's already ruled that out. It does cut it kind of close on the mileage. He has to go 80 miles round trip on a daily basis, and if you have to go more than that, you might be running into trouble unless you're able to charge at work. And then the 90 miles one way, I mean, probably do it, no problem. But range anxiety is real, and yeah, so he already sort of ruled this car out. The Prius Prime will definitely put you to sleep.
Big time.
Yeah. Very practical. It's great for commuting, but yeah, it's not very exciting at all. He mentions the Volt. The Volt is super fun to drive, in my opinion. It already feels old, and it's only going to feel older as they're, not making them anymore. And but that I could totally get behind, especially if you can get in on the rebate before April. Yeah, if you like that, that's a good choice. Bolt EV is kind of fun. Plenty of range there. It's got lots of power. My opinion's not super comfortable. But he asks, should he wait for something like the Kona? I think check out the Kia Niro EV. It's coming out anytime now. The Kona is similar. They're both pretty quick. They're both easy to drive. They both have a lot of range. The Niro EV, I think, is just a little more exciting. It feels you get a little more sound from the motor. It just feels a little more sporty. It's the final gear ratio is a little different. So I don't have the numbers, but I think it felt like the Niro accelerated faster. And I thought it was super comfortable. The seating position was a little weird. But the seats were really supportive, so give that a try. If the seats don't do it for you, check out the Kona. It's a little quieter, a little calmer. But yeah, like tons of range and comfortable. And for both of those, you're going to be starting around 30,000 after the rebate. So you're going to have, if you're between 30, 35,000, you might have a little bit of spending money for some options, or I think you could do well with that. That's what I would look at. What about you, Greg?
So I'm a little torn on this. Part of me thinks if you're looking to go down this road, maybe do try the Model 3. He mentions that it's a clear was a clear favorite, money aside.
Right.
So whenever somebody tells me that, I almost kind of want to confirm what they're like, the way they're leaning. I would also say probably the Bolt would be a strong one too for me. I just like the Bolt. I think it looks a little weird inside and out. I don't love exactly what they did with that side of things. But I think that's the better play. Weston writes that he's a little concerned about the Volt looking old.
Yeah.
And frankly, it does look old. It frankly looks like a really nice Chevy Cruze. It probably is the best driver of some of these outside of maybe the Tesla.
Yeah.
Because it has good steering, a good chassis. It's nicely planted. That being said, you could probably get a pretty good deal on a Volt as they start to phase it down.
Yeah,
so,
it's
a very solid car.
Right. It's fun. Yeah. And you can probably get a great deal on one.
That's probably worth just looking at because that might start to make your choice a little bit for you if you can live with it.
And I kind of skipped over the Model 3. It's just by the time, you get down to that $35,000 price range, the rebate's going to be, gone.
Yeah,
probably.
exactly. It's a very cool car, though.
It is.
I mean, it's the coolest of anything we've talked about here.
It's really fun. It's really fun to drive. It's quick. Handles well. If you can live with the user interface, good. But for me, having everything that touch screen's a little weird, a little difficult. But yeah, I think the price and the timing sort of don't work out on that one.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. It's if you're willing to play the waiting game and you're also willing to play it a little looser with the purse strings, then okay, go Tesla. Otherwise, I would investigate just what you could get price wise for a Volt. I have no concerns about them essentially killing off the car just because. I mean, it's still made by Chevy, and they're not going anywhere.
Right.
So that's not something I'd worry about. It's it's not like this is an Oldsmobile or something where the dealers are going away. You'll be fine with that.
Yeah.
So it's worth price shopping on that. At that point, know that you would get a car that's pretty fun to drive. Obviously, less of pure EV capability,
but it still has a decent EV range. You're going to be doing most of your driving under electric power with that. So
if you treat it like a very transactional experience, hey, is this a good deal? That's one play. The Bolt is where I would lean as far as just a little bit more emotional, a little bit more of a green range, an EV range. But yeah, those would be my top two. And then maybe just kind of look at the prices, look at where you emotionally land, and then make the call. Did you have a final verdict on this, John, or were you more like play the field?
My final verdict would be Kia Niro EV.
Also a really good choice.
Or, depending on the deal, the Volt.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, good luck with that. Please write us in and let us know where you land on this one, Weston. Really appreciate you listening to the podcast and taking time to write to us.
Yeah, this was a fun one.
It was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun for the show.
Yeah.
Good time.
Good time.
Good having you here, John.
Good being here.
Alrighty. Back from ice driving and bracing for the final icy weeks of winter here in Michigan. That's all the time we have. Please rate us on Apple Podcasts. We are now on Spotify and, of course, YouTube. We're on the Autoblog website. You can find us there as well. Thanks for listening. Be safe out there. Have a great week.